Hello, I'm Dr. June Chen, and I'm a breast radiologist with BreastLink. And today I have Dr. John West, who is a world-renowned breast cancer surgeon, a leader in his field. And he is here to talk about his new campaign, which is the 40 Not 50 campaign. Thank you for being here, Dr. West.
Thank you for allowing me to comment on the 40 Not 50 campaign. I am very energized about this. As you know, we've made incredible progress in diagnosing small cancers in young women, and with screening mammograms and then some of our other modalities that you've talked about, ultrasound and MRI. And so we're able to cut breast cancer mortality in half in this younger age group. And despite this incredible progress, we have a government committee, the U.S. Services, a Preventative Services Task Force, is saying that women should start mammograms at age 50, do it every other year, and stop at 74. If these guidelines are implemented, it's going to be tragic. Young women will have delay in diagnosis, and women will die needlessly from breast cancer. It's so intolerable. It's hard to believe that a government agency is even making these recommendations.
Isn't it true that 1 in 6 breast cancers are diagnosed in women between the ages of 40 and 49?
That's exactly right. And not only that, more years of life are lost for women in their 40s than for all the years of life lost for women 50 and older. Not only that, when they do studies on women who have died from breast cancer, over half of them were diagnosed before the age of 50. You could make a credible case that breast cancer is primarily a disease of young women. So it's when a government task force says, don't start until 50, you kind of, where are they coming from? Well, this task force is an isolated task force. They are not transparent, they're not held accountable, but they have the ability to pass laws or rules that change how we practice medicine. For instance, it's the same group that said men don't need the PSA screening for prostate, and they said every 3 years for pap smears, and every 7 or 9 years for colonoscopies. I don't know the data on those things. It strikes me as being odd, because I think by doing more effective or aggressive screening, you're going to save lives. But I do know the data inside and out when it comes to breast cancer care. And I know the data stating that starting early, age 40, younger if you're high risk, doing it every year can drop breast cancer mortality in half. Now that's an unbelievable number, and it's mind-boggling. Maybe if I try to explain why they justify their opinion, there's several things that they do to justify it. First of all, they do admit there is at least a slight mortality reduction by starting at 40. That's completely inaccurate. There's a major mortality reduction. But they say, well, at age 40, we have too many false positives. And of course, if we start at 50, when you don't have previous mammograms to compare it to, the first mammogram always is a little bit more associated with a biopsy that ends up being benign. But most women, when they have a spot and it comes back benign, say, oh, thank God, I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad I know it's benign. They don't discuss the anxiety associated with a delayed diagnosis. They also point out that young women have denser breasts, and that's true, but now we have things that will allow us to do very well with women with dense breasts. Probably the thing that's the most disturbing about what they do is the scientific basis of what they say is based on a study from Canada. It was a $25 million study. It was reported recently, and the study concluded that mammograms don't work. And not only that, they concluded that 22% of breast cancers would have disappeared spontaneously if we didn't have treatment. That's in direct contrast to every other study that's ever been done. When we went back to look at it, we found 2 major flaws. One, as opposed to every other study that randomizes patients into a mammography group versus no mammography group, they use something that's totally arbitrary, like does your last number of your social security number, is it even or odd? That would divide them, sort of arm's length division. Well, in their group, they had nurses examine every patient. This has never been done before. They knew who had breast cancer to start with, or who had at least suspicious lumps, but some of them had actually advanced cancer, and the disproportionate share of those went in the mammography group. So either you could as you look at their data and say mammograms don't work and 22% of people are overtreated, or you could say, well, maybe it's a flawed study. Not only was it this randomization that was flawed, but the quality of their mammography was extremely poor. In fact, they had 6 international experts look at their imaging, and all of them resigned from the study and said the quality was too poor to judge it. So it kind of makes you believe that maybe this study is totally invalid and flawed, and it's just totally inappropriate for this task force to rely on that kind of data.
Well, it would make you wonder if that study should be even taken into account when we're talking about breast cancer and mammography and whether or not mammography is.
Well, I certainly think we should discard it, but the interesting thing was that study was reported, it went international, and people basically bought into it hook, line, and sinker. And this is a powerful change that's going on in our country. I think the government is so concerned about rising healthcare costs that they're looking at areas where they can cut back, and so this gives them an excuse to not pay. But if you're going to cut back on healthcare, wouldn't you think you'd take maybe elderly people and say that you've reached a certain point, we're going to cut back. If you want to have a hip replacement at age 80, you have to have your own insurance. But to throw young women under the bus based on faulty data, it just seems almost criminal to me that they could make these statements. But the reality is there's a temporary moratorium from Congress. If something isn't done to reverse this, these rules will go into effect, and insurance companies will have an excuse not to pay. And as a result, a large number of women will go without their mammograms, diagnosis will be late, and the chances of survival will go down.
That would be a tragedy.
A total tragedy, thinking it's coming based on flawed and irrational data. But we want to fight back. And I don't see any other groundswell of effort to try to block these guidelines. So we have worked with change.org. It's an easy website to go on, and you can go to change.org and go to search function and then just type in 40, not 50, and you can sign our petition. We want to get 1 million signatures or more. I would like to take these to Congress, and I'd like to debate the representatives from the U.S. Preventative Task Force and say, look, your data is flawed. What you're saying is inappropriate, and it's dangerous. What we need is support. We need the community to get involved in this thing. We need to have you go to change.org, press the button for search, type in 40, not 50. You'll see our campaign. You'll see a short video. You can sign our petition, and then I would encourage you to send it to as many of your friends as possible. We need to get a groundswell of support from the public at large, and if we do, we can fight back, and we can win the battle.
Dr. West, thank you very much for taking the lead in the 40, not 50 campaign. It will be life-saving for so many women.
Thank you for allowing me to talk about it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. West, for leading this very important campaign, the 40, not 50 campaign. You're helping save many, many women's lives.